Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to let people filter in here for a minute or two, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. See people still coming in. We're going to be ready in just here, about 30 seconds. We'll get up. All right, y'all. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the DFSS webinar for the New Arrivals Meals program. My name is Eric Schell. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning and Impact here at DFSS. I'm going to be moderating us through the next hour and so. We are hoping to get through all the information for this RFP today. This information is in the RFP itself. It's language right from the text, but we hope that this can kind of lay out those that detail a little more for you. And we're going to be taking questions. You can use the Q&A function throughout this process to put your questions into that Q&A. We're going to be taking questions at the end all at once, and we're going to take them in order received. And if you end up not getting your question answered, or you get your question answered, but let's say you forget the answer, we're going to be providing an amendment to the RFP that's going to summarize all the questions that were asked here, as well as things that arise during site visits. We released Meals RFP on October 12th, about 6 days ago. Our due date remains November 9th, and that is at 12 noon. We're going to say 12 noon a lot in this, just so that it's very clear and obvious and said many times. The due date is November 9th, and the time that it's due, 12 noon, not midnight. I'm going to move us through some quick housekeeping. The volume of participants is such that we have y'all on mute, except for myself and the program manager, Danny here, who's going to be speaking to us shortly. Those questions are going to be submitted in the Q&A. And like I said, we're going to respond there at the end. Any technical issues, you can notify us in that question box as well. We are recording this webinar. It will be posted on the DFSS YouTube channel following this presentation, once we can get it up there. And that is, we're also going to be posting these PowerPoint slides here on the URL you see in front of you. All right. So this is our agenda for the day. We're going to be going through welcome and introductions. I've already introduced myself, but Danny will introduce himself here in a minute. We're going to go through the sections of the RFP as you have seen them, the purpose, goals, and current state, where we see priorities for improvement, requirements of this program, our goals, and how we're going to do selection criteria. Then we're going to have some information about the site visits. Those are coming up next week. And the overall timeline for the RFP itself and the contract. And then I'm going to take you, I'll be coming back to you to talk through any technical questions you might have about e-procurement, talk through how to submit your final draft, and then we'll be taking your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Danny. Why don't you go ahead?
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, everyone. Eric, can you hear me okay? Just doing a sound check.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Great. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Danny Castaneda. I'm the Director for the New Arrivals Response here at the Department of Family and Support Services. Thank you all for joining. Some of these slides, just to preview, will have a lot of text. I'll try and refrain from reading all of the text right off of the screen. I'll sort of summarize for you, but just really wanted to I didn't want to leave any key pieces out, but will emphasize that please, when you are putting your proposal together, that you thoroughly read the RFP that's been released and posted, so that there aren't any key pieces missing. This webinar is intended to sort of recap, so please review the webinar, but also thoroughly review the RFP that's been released and posted. So I'll kick us off with the purpose of this RFP. First and foremost, is to provide high quality, culturally congruent, and nutritious meals for the city's new arrival shelter system. And then it's really to, continue to serve those within the shelter system, but also those residing in temporary respite locations. In many cases, for likely you all are very aware, on the new arrivals that are currently waiting at police stations for shelter. So the goals for this RFP, again, just to really emphasize, is to provide dignified, culturally congruent, and nutritious food, both for those new arrivals that are in shelter, but also to include those that are waiting for shelter at police stations. Promote the health and well-being of all clients. That has really been our goal from day one, but given the fluidity of the mission, we really want to emphasize that as a goal for this RFP in particular, and then avoid adverse health conditions. New arrivals are arriving with diverse health needs, and the provision of healthy meals prevents exacerbating those needs. So we really want to be able to make the necessary accommodations to respond to the full population, both in shelter and at police stations. So just wanted to give a sort of a quick overview of the current state of the new arrivals response. So over the past year, over 18,000 new arrivals have arrived in the city of Chicago. Again, since August of 2022, when the city of Chicago received its first bus sanctioned by the state of Texas. In response to the ongoing arrivals, the city has opened and continues to open and operate a series of new arrivals emergency shelters. And so currently we have just over 11,000 new arrivals that include single adults and those with children in shelter. And then we also have just over 3,500 new arrivals waiting for shelter at police stations and O'Hare. So the priorities for improvement. So again, just really want to ensure the quality food with ingredients, varied recipes, and preparation methods that support good nutrition and culturally preferred by the population of new arrivals. So the top 4 countries of origin for new arrivals in shelter currently, and that this is in order, the vast majority of new arrivals are still from Venezuela, second from Colombia, third from Haiti, and fourth from Ecuador. So just wanted to provide some examples here of the culturally preferred ingredients. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but just wanted to provide a good starting point. And then we also want to ensure that all new arrival shelters receive 2 hot meals as part of the 3 meal units incorporated in the daily menu, and the hot meals ideally during the lunchtime and dinner meal. And then of course, provide high quality meals at a sustainable cost. So just to kick us off for program requirements, there's going to be several slides on program requirements, so please bear with me. I will try and summarize, but again, just want to emphasize, please thoroughly review the webinar and thoroughly review the RFP to ensure that all of the requirements are understood before submitting your proposals. So first and foremost, meal provision. So the administrator will be responsible for ensuring the daily provision of complete, freshly prepared, and ready-to-eat meals at new arrival shelters and temporary respite locations, aka police stations. And then the city anticipates that the new arrivals meal program, the capacity will provide likely up to 15,000 meals for up to 15,000 individuals. The administrator shall also be responsible for developing and submitting a varied menu sample in advance of the program execution. This menu is really intended to demonstrate how the administrator will keep meals varied and culturally congruent. And then the administrator will submit a 30-day meal menu to repeat at most 3 times over the course of the quarter, and will be responsible for adjusting and reconfiguring that menu, really in consultation with DFSS. So the second piece that we wanted to highlight here is the equipment that will be required for the meal service program. So the administrator must ensure that the following equipment is provided for use at each shelter site as necessary. So some of these examples, so we really wanted to highlight some of these. So steam tables, steam table pans, coffee making equipment, and then refrigeration. And then the meal delivery specification. Again, I won't read all of the text on the screen, but please review the RFP and the slides after the webinar. And of course, if there's something here that sticks out to you and you have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat and we'll address it at the Q&A at the end. So meal unit deliveries must arrive within the following times that are listed here. And then for temporary respite sites, the meal unit deliveries must arrive during the following times, which is slightly, actually the times for shelters and for respite sites are the same, but just wanted to break that out there. Deliveries must be made into the designated dining areas. So we just expect that that meal deliveries will be placed in the dining areas, and again, not in the hallway or another not appropriate location within the shelter or respite space. Hot food must be delivered hot. The administrator and all subcontracted providers are responsible for placing the hot food into the preheated steam tables. And then if shelter staff, respite center staff, or DFSS staff notifies the administrator or subcontracted provider upon delivery of any shortages and or poorly prepared meals or portions of meals, the administrator shall make every attempt to replace all necessary items prior to the serving time, or otherwise issue a credit to DFSS. And this is really just to ensure that that each shelter or respite location is receiving the appropriate amount of food. So subcontracted provider requirements. So in addition to the directly provided catered meals, the selected administrator may award additional subcontracts to catered meal providers, including local restaurants, caterers, and other local support organizations. Secondary providers are expected to meet the same requirements and standards outlined in the entire program requirements. So all of which we're highlighting here. And then the administrator is encouraged to provide meals using a combination of their own resources and facilities, along with those of the subcontracted partners, again, local restaurants, caterers, and others. And then I just wanted to highlight some of the subcontractor responsibilities, but again, certainly not an exhaustive list. So providing meals, really that provision, providing meals in line with dietary, medical, or religious restrictions, providing ad hoc meal capacity system-wide as needed, and then ensuring food service staff have and maintain the appropriate training and certifications in accordance with state and local public health codes. And then the administrator must directly coordinate with subcontracted providers for meal provision. All subcontractors are required to follow the same safety requirements and attend listed trainings as outlined in this RFP. And then the administrator is responsible for ensuring all subcontracted agencies follow these requirements. So coordination requirements with shelter staff. After delivery by the administrator or the subcontracted providers, meals shall be served by shelter staff. The administrator shall work closely with shelter staff to ensure that the administrator receives feedback on client satisfaction, food quality, and areas of improvement. So we really just want to make sure that we're setting the tone for the administrator and the subcontracted providers to really coordinate directly with shelter staff to receive feedback that they're hearing, or feedback directly from clients, and so on. So emergency procedures and backup plan. The administrator must notify DFSS 48 hours in advance if a scheduled delivery cannot be made. The notice must be made via email, including the reason why deliveries cannot be, and when deliveries will be resumed. The administrator must provide DFSS a written backup plan for emergencies and other conditions which prevent the scheduled delivery of meals, such as weather emergencies or equipment failures. Really, the emphasis here is that things will come up. So we just want to make sure that that program administrator and its subcontracted partners are prepared with an emergency procedure and backup plan. Because regardless of the circumstances, people will need to be fed, and we just want to make sure that we have an emergency protocol in place so that appropriate meals are still getting delivered across all shelters and respite locations. Standards for quality control. So the administrator must ensure compliance with all applicable federal, state, and local laws, rules, and regulations, including but not limited to those that are listed here. So Illinois Department of Public Health, the Chicago Department of Public Health, and DFSS in the performance of this agreement. The administrator is responsible for ensuring compliance with such laws and regulations for both meals they provide directly, as well as any meals, again, provided by the subcontractors. Time temperature testing shall be conducted using an approved food grade thermometer and monitored by staff regularly. And the administrator must ensure that it has a process for ensuring and enforcing food safety and sanitation procedures relative to the handling and preparation of food. The administrator must ensure that all food is prepared in an inspected facility. All foods must be prepared and packaged with methods that avoid the growth of pathogenic organisms. So staffing and staff training requirements. So the administrator must have sufficient staffing levels for the operation of the new arrivals meal program as outlined in this RFP. Again, we expect to, through this program, serve up to 15,000 individuals. So really want to make sure that the capacity of the administrator is there. The administrator must ensure food service staff directly employed or subcontracted by the administrator have and maintain the appropriate training and certifications in accordance with state and local public health codes. In addition, the administrator is responsible for ensuring that all shelter staff who will be serving food have completed the appropriate food handler certification, and that sufficient shelter staff have received the food service manager training to ensure that there's a certified food service manager on site at each shelter for each meal. And then finally, the respondent may either directly provide shelter staff these trainings and certifications if they are licensed to do so, or may coordinate with shelters and DFSS to register and pay for staff to attend these trainings provided by other entities. So resident training and information, the administrator will engage residents in monthly nutrition trainings at each shelter site and provide written informational materials related to health and nutrition. Just providing some of the topics that the training should cover as appropriate here. And then written informational materials should be made available at each training based on the average number of attendees. All trainings and information written and oral must be culturally competent and available in the following languages. So English, Spanish, French, and Creole as requested by specific shelter sites. And then the administrator may engage a subcontracted local restaurants, caterers, and other local support organizations for this purpose specifically. And then performance goals and outcomes. So to track progress toward achieving the outcome goals of this program and assess success, DFSS will monitor a set of indicators that will include, but certainly not limited to, so a couple of examples, 100% of client complaints are logged through proper channels to DFSS and are brought to attention into regular check-in meetings with DFSS program managers and shelter staff. And then 100% of meal units are delivered on time, barring inclement weather and/or events that might prohibit timely delivery. Again, really operationalizing that emergency protocol that was named earlier. To monitor and recognize intermediate progress toward the above performance indicators, DFSS also intends to track output metrics that may include, but are not limited to, number of meal units provided by site, number of staff and resident trainings provided, as well as attendance at those trainings, number of on-site inspections at both shelter and respite centers, food safety presentations to shelter staff are attended by at least 60% of on-site shelter staff, and safety presentations following a rotten or spoiled food complaint receive 100% attendance for on-site shelter staff. And then finally, DFSS encourages respondents to propose additional indicators and metrics, including those that demonstrate early success and are indicative of participants' progress. So how we will, so really our selection criteria for the RFP has 5 categories, the first one being community involvement. So the respondent demonstrates a clear understanding of the target population, including their strengths and assets and needs and challenges. The respondent demonstrates client and community engagement activities that will inform their service delivery. The respondent has expertise working with the target population and has relevant capabilities and or infrastructure needed to serve this group. The respondent demonstrates a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, access, and then the respondent's leadership reflects and engages the diverse people of the communities it serves. So organizational capacity. So the respondent has qualified staff responsible for program oversight and management, has adequate systems and processes to support monitoring the program expenditures and fiscal controls. The respondent describes an HR strategy for filling essential positions in a timely manner, including a timeline to execute their plan. And then the respondent describes the logistics of meal preparation, delivery, and other demands, along with existing infrastructure to support those tasks. The strength of proposed program. So the respondent clearly defines services to be provided that are appropriate to addressing the needs and achieving the desired outcomes for this target population. They provide their experience in the planning, preparation, and delivery of food service, clearly demonstrates an ability to adjust service delivery to meet changes in the target population, including increases or decreases in the size of the population. This is really key, just given how fluid the new arrivals response has been throughout the last over a year now, but continues to be. The respondent describes the way in which their service will provide subcontracted and other local support organizations, including letters of agreement or support. In which their service will include, not provide, subcontracted and other local support organizations. Describes how they will source, prepare, and serve meals that support good nutrition and cultural preference for a complex and evolving population. The respondent provides a 30-day meal menu aligned around culturally appropriate foods and other mission-critical elements. And then they speaks to their ability to provide hot meals at respite centers in compliance with food and safety requirements of this RFP. So, and then performance management and outcomes. The respondent demonstrates evidence of strong past performance against desired outcome goals and performance metrics and or other notable accomplishments in providing services, has experience using data to inform and or improve its services or practices, and has relevant systems and processes needed to collect and secure data. And then finally, reasonable cost, budget justification, and leverage of funds. So the respondent has the fiscal capacity to implement the proposed program. The respondent leverages other funds and in-kind contributions to support the total program and administrative cost, and then demonstrates reasonable implementation cost and funding requests relative to its financial and human resources, and the proposed budget supports the proposed scope of work and work plan. And then, of course, the required attachments for the RFP. Please be sure to attach your organization's budget and cost proposal for this program. These are separate documents included in the application and are 100% required. Please make sure all program requirements are addressed, including the attachments listed in the application. And then site visits. So we, in order to ensure respondents can accurately respond to this request for proposal, DFSS is offering site visits at the following times. So we've split up the city into the North region and South region, really with West Lake Street being the dividing line. So North region will be Monday and Tuesday. So Monday, October 23rd and Tuesday, October 24th. And then South region will be Tuesday, October 24th and Wednesday, October 25th. So if you are interested in site visits, they are not required, but are recommended. Respondents must register in advance for a site visit by emailing the email address on the screen, dfss-homeless@cityofchicago.org, no later than tomorrow, Thursday, October 9th at 11:59 p.m. So just before midnight, with the names and contact information of who will attend the site visit, and please specify which site visit you plan on attending. And then please limit attendance to no more than 2 people per agency per site. Really want to emphasize this last point here. Really narrow down to 2 people per agency per site. So those, key members of your team that are drafting the proposal and need to be on the site visit. Again, want to emphasize this specifically because these are people's temporary homes. So we really want to be mindful of the traffic that we're bringing in, because people are actively caring for themselves and their families in these spaces, and so we want to be respectful to them and their space. And then timeline. So the pre-proposal webinar is today, and it is being recorded, so we will post it online so that it's available for your future review or for anyone that wasn't able to attend today's webinar. Again, to emphasize, we have site visits Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. We do have a due date for pre-proposal questions, so please ensure that if you have follow-up questions after this webinar, that you submit those questions by October 25th at 11:59 p.m. Applications will be due by November 9th at noon, no later on the November 9th at noon, and all applications will need to be submitted online. Emailed applications will not be accepted. And then program period is expected to begin on December 1st. And then budgets and cost proposals. So the term of contract executed under this RFP will be from December 1st of this year through December 30th of next year, 2024. Based on need, availability of funds, and contractor performance, DFSS may extend this term for up to 5 times for 6-month terms, and continued support will be dependent upon the selected respondent's performance and the continued availability of funding and need, of course. Anticipated funding per award will be based on a per client per day meal cost of $13 through $17. I really wanted to highlight that range there. There will be up to 2 awards for this RFP, and this contract will operate on a reimbursement basis only. Respondents must submit both an overall budget and a cost proposal, providing information about the cost per meal for a specified set of meal unit types. Applicants should include in their cost proposal the expected cost per meal unit and be prepared to explain the reasoning behind this estimate. Per meal estimates should include all costs related to meal production, delivery, staffing, transportation, and direct meal cost. Additionally, applicants should indicate in their proposal whether any in-kind donations or provisions would be included in their standard operations for this program. Respondents should include their true estimated cost and should indicate in their budget proposal the cost for staff safety and resident nutrition trainings using the template provided. Please submit a budget for 1 year, so up to 12 months of services. Cost category definitions are attached as budget instructions in every RFP. Be thoughtful and inclusive when developing your budget. Apply for your program's actual cost. We cannot give you more money than what you asked for. However, we can give you less. Use the reasonable cost question on the application to discuss how you determine the cost reflected in the budget.
Okay. Thank you so much, Danny. I'm going to take over here and then get us through some e-procurement logistics, and then get right to your questions. So again, use that Q&A function. That's where we're going to be taking questions from. We will say this a few times before this ends. This will, I believe, not be the last time. Applications are due November 9th. That's at 12 noon. I'll say one more time, that's at 12 noon on November 9th. Applications, as Danny said, do need to come in through the e-procurement system. Your budgets and cost proposals, we wanted to highlight some common errors we see in here. Make sure you're checking your calculations on your fringe benefits. Supplies are frequently under or over budgeted for. Make sure you're just justifying those in a way that makes sense to you. Client assistance, do not forget to include it if needed. Make sure your job description titles all have the same title as what you upload. So if you're showing your organizational jobs, and you upload one job ad or job description, and then you budget in your budget document for a differently named but same position. Just make sure those match for us. And then do put your budget in the appropriate column. Same goes for cost proposals. And if you have match, do be sure to show it. I'll say this a couple more times as well. Start early and save often. That's start early on this application and save as often as you possibly can while you're doing it. If you've never done business with the city of Chicago before, please do register in e-procurement as soon as possible. You do not want to underestimate the amount of time that might take, or if there's a technical glitch on anybody's computers or sides. You want to review that RFP narrative, as Danny said. Look at those application questions very closely. They're written intentionally and to direct you and make sure that you have a full sense of what this program is going to require. And when you're writing your questions, use that same narrative, right? It is there for you to use. Do note there is a 4,000 character limit on your answers when you are providing the answers to the questions in the RFP. Some people like to pull those questions down and answer them in like a Word document. So do check your character limits. That's going to include punctuation and spaces. And when you are in e-procurement, it really hates you using that back button on the browser. It's just one of those systems that doesn't like it. Try to navigate forward as much as you can and save often. We're going to look at exactly how you save often with screenshots, just so we're sure. Some additional tips for working in the e-procurement system. You're going to, if you want to submit multiple applications for a single RFP, you will need to set up unique user accounts. So like Danny said, there are 2 regions that you're applying for. And when you apply for a region. So let's say you wanted to apply only for the North region, you're submitting one application. But if you wanted to apply for citywide services, you're applying twice. You're applying for the North region and you're applying for the South region. That means you're going to have a unique account for each of those applications. You got to use different email address, and it says there in red. You must use a separate email address for each submitted proposal. So if you're submitting for the whole city, you're submitting 2, and you should have 2 people at your organizations, different email addresses, set themselves up in that e-procurement system. You can submit that application and amend it all the way up to the due date, November 9th, 2023. Again, 12 noon. So that means if you submit early and you're a couple days in and you want to make an amendment, you can do so all the way up to that due date. Avoid the rush, any possible mishaps. You should expect at bare minimum the submission process taking you 30 to 60 minutes to fill out. That's if you have everything ready to go. Late applications will not be accepted. And at any time, if e-procurement is confusing or seems to behaving in a way that doesn't make sense to you, we have an e-procurement hotline. It's the number on the screen there, 312-744-4357. That's 312-744-HELP. That hotline hours is business hours only. That's Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Save often and submit early. We might say it even one more time before this ends. New agency requirements. You are going to need, this is a new agency, you're applying for the city for the first time. You're going to need to provide articles of incorporation and any of those amended articles. You're going to want your IRS affirmation letter. This is nonprofits only, but you do need to have that dated within 60 days of your submission. If you are for profit, you can just submit your original letter from the IRS, including the FEIN number. You're going to want your DUNS number and your SAM certificate. Also the CCR, your contractor registration. You just need the copy of the entity overview page, and then your certificate of good standing letter with the state of Illinois. Technical assistance, this was said before, it will be said here again on the DFSS webpage. We have a link to the RFP of interest and training documents. That's in the alert section of our website. For questions on the registration and e-procurement technical assistance, we looked at that phone number, and here's an email address in case the phone number doesn't seem to be working for you. That's customer support at cityofchicago.org. Again, that phone number, 312-744-HELP. And then linked here, you'll see training materials. That's documents and video. That is going to be linked in this PowerPoint, which will be available again on the alert section of our website. Here's how you accept an amendment. What an amendment is we post the RFP, and after our webinar, we put all the questions you ask into an amendment and any changes that took place in the RFP in the meantime. That's going to get posted, and you have to accept the amendment in order for your submission, your application to be fully submitted. So we're going to walk through the steps of what that looks like and how to accept the amendment. If the RFP has been amended, it will be. In order to start an application, you need to acknowledge the amendment first. If it has not yet been amended, you can go to create quote from the drop-down menu. That's there on the right circle. And in the actions box, and click on go, right? And that the little warning that you see in the left circle there, that's always going to tell you that either something has happened that might prevent you from submitting your application. We're going to see that a couple of times. Step 2 here, you're going to begin the acceptance and acknowledgement process by opening that RFP up and looking at the document number, reviewing those changes, which are going to be posted, and acknowledging receipt and understanding of those changes. So you're going to see there that number 1 circle on the left, that's your document number. It's what it looks like in the system. Number 2 there on the little eyeglasses under review changes is going to tell you what changed and what the amendment is doing. And then button number 3 there in the circle is acknowledging those amendments. Do make sure you're aware of those changes. We try to keep them as minimal as possible, but sometimes we have a misunderstanding or something changes in from a question that was asked and we want to make a clarification. It's all important to read. Finally, step 3 here, you're going to get a section that says, I accept. That's left there. I accept the terms and conditions of that RFP and that amendment. And then you're going to click on the right there, circle acknowledge. So 2 options here or 2 instances in which you're acknowledging the receipt and acceptance. Finally, one more time, you're clicking yes to indicate you do in fact confirm that amendment. It's going to give you a whole screen for it. And then one more time, this is now time 4. You're clicking on the checkbox that you accept the terms and conditions, and you're accepting them on the circle of the upper right. This is the final step in accepting that amendment. So it's going to ask you 4 times in a row. Submitting the application. So it's been amended. You've finished your application. Now it's time to submit. When you're ready to submit, you start by saving your draft one last time. That first circle on the upper right, but the one on the left says save draft. When we say start early, save often, that's where you're saving often. Once you finally save that one last time, you're going to go ahead and click continue. If you're missing any information, you're going to get an error message. Basically, when you say continue, it's going to scan your entire application, look for gaps, and then tell you where those gaps might be. Typically, that error message is going to direct you to something left undone. In this particular example, you need to fill out your lines, and so you just go and you do so. Here you see quote value is registered for first name. This person didn't put their first name. So you just go and you go to quote value and you find your first name and you go ahead and answer it. Once your application is free from errors, you're going to be able to click continue and go through to the process to submit. This is going to put your application into the review and submit phase. You're going to see there on the upper left in that circle, you're in review and submit when it says your quote number, review and submit. This is your last chance right here to review all your data, confirm that it's accurate. It's going to give you the full rundown. This is just like when you do your taxes online. It's like when you do anything online that requires a long form. They're going to show all the information back to you. If you see any inaccuracies, you got to go back in and change it before you submit. Here at the bottom left is when you're going to be asked to provide electronic signature. You're going to want to fill in your signature and check that box. This is the exact same as filling in an electronic signature any other place. So go ahead and fill that out. We're well practiced in it at this point. Fill in your name and click the box that you are inputting your title. Then you're clicking submit. Bottom right, highlighted, square, big arrow to it. That's the button that you click. This is going to be your submission confirmation screen. It's going to give a nice little green check mark and you say your quote for this RFP has been submitted. And then that is, you will get an email confirmation within 24 hours of that submission. But you can always email us if you want to just make double sure. I am now going to move us into questions, and I'm going to finalize us on this one page just so you have Danny's contact information, and mine should be in the RFP as well. How this is going to work is we are going to go question by question, apologies. we're going to go question by question, and then either Danny or I are going to answer them to the best of our ability. From there, if we feel like we want to give you a more full answer, or maybe we don't have the answer to our fingers, we are going to just say we're going to answer that in the amendment, and you can look towards the amendment for the fullest answer of that question. So first question here that I see, how soon, apologies, will the city pay for meals? Net 1430 or something else. I will say I do not know net 1430. Danny, did you want to take this one?
I think we can answer that through the amendment.
Okay. Next up here, dietitian on staff with the city or hired as a subcontractor by the administrator.
So we will not have an assigned city dietitian for the program. So it would be hired as a subcontractor by the administrator.
Excellent. Will a list of attendees be provided? I can take that one. Most of you will probably have answered a quick questionnaire in the registration of this, where you gave your first, last name, your organization, phone number, email address, as well as your consent on whether that information could be provided. We only got that question out a little bit late, so some of you all came in and registered before that question was added. We're going to try to reach out, get that question answered, and then we will publish the list of attendees for consent was given. Danny, I miss anything on that?
Nope, you covered it.
Great. Next one here, up to 15,000 meals given the forever changing landscape. Would we go past this amount?
Good question. One we anticipated. I think it's hard to say. Will we likely shelter more than 15,000 new arrivals? Yes. So I would say it's going to be very much impacted by the current state at that time. But I think the answer is likely yes.
The next question here, can we hire additional staff to alleviate the workload of this program?
Yes, actually we encourage that. But that the cost per meal per person, or per client per day meal cost of $13, the range that we provided in the RFP, 13 to 17, includes all costs, which would include any additional staff that you would be hiring to manage the program.
All right. Next question here, how many of these sites are there throughout the city, and would the agency be going to multiple sites for delivery?
Yes, the administrator would be responsible for delivery. The administrator or subcontracted partners would be responsible for going to multiple sites. The RFP lists the sites that we had at that time. So please feel free to at the time of the release of the RFP, which was last Thursday, October 12th. So please look at the RFP and you can see the various locations that the administrator would be responsible for delivering to.
Where can I locate the RFP? The city website has a direct link to all open RFPs, but we'll include in the amendment a direct link as well. Shannon, I'm not sure if you've joined us. Is there a way, if you could track down the exact URL, that we could probably answer that in this as well as in the amendment? Next question here, are you searching for just one administrator? The RFP stipulates we are looking to award 1 to 2 administrators. That would be 1 administrator for both regions, or 2 administrators, 1 for each region. Danny, is that right?
Yes, sorry, I was answering another question live,
No
but
worries.
did you say the same administrator can apply for both?
Yes. So as I was
Yes.
describing earlier in the slide deck, one administrator can apply for both regions and therefore serve the city as a whole.
Yep.
Thanks for that clarification. Next question here. Can the proposals just be for the shelters, or does a proposal have to include the police districts? Can a proposal be, let's take this one at a time. So let's start with that first one. Can the proposals be just for the shelters, or does a proposal have to include the police districts?
So the proposal has to include both. So you would be applying for either the North region or the South region. But your proposal should include, your decision on which region you want to apply for, but it would include the shelters and respite locations, i.e. police districts, in the region that you are applying for. So to the second question, can a proposal just be for police districts? The answer there would be no. Is that Eric, can you affirm that answer?
Yes, that's right.
Cool. And then are the police districts split into North and South regions? Yes, hopefully I answered that in the first response, but the city is split up into North and South region, again, with West Lake Street being the dividing line. So you would be applying for either or both, but separate proposals or separate submissions. And you would be, your proposal should capture both serving shelters in either or both regions, and police stations in either or both regions.
Great. Next question here. How many agencies will be awarded funding for this? Similar to the last, there will be either 1 to 2 awardees for this particular RFP. The next question here, SAM certificate is mandatory. As a question, is SAM certificate mandatory? Danny, if it's all right, I'll take that one. I believe, and I'm going to double check this here. That the SAM certificate is basically your government's way, or your way of saying that you are certified to, that you have a registration to do business with the US federal government. I do believe it is mandatory, but I want to defer to the amendment in case that answer needs to be updated. Next question here. Can you talk about cold breakfast and unlimited hydration and milk? Is that also part of the $13 to $17 per person per day?
Yes, so the $13 to $17 range is per client per day meal cost, which would include all of the various pieces that are mentioned in this RFP. So that includes any staffing, equipment, and all of the actual food items, including hydration and milk. If you have additional questions about the cold breakfast, feel free to throw them in the chat. But otherwise, I'm not sure. Yeah, just feel free to expand on the question about the cold breakfast, just to make sure that we can address any sort of questions you have around that more specifically.
Next question here. Will the city pay in 14 days or 30 after invoices are submitted?
I believe it's 30, but we will answer that question appropriately through the amendment, just so that we can make sure that we're answering that correctly. Not sure if you have anything to add there, Eric.
My instinct is also 30, but I want to make double sure. And so we'll answer that in the amendment with a positive response. Next question here. How will subcontractors be selected and when?
So in the RFP, we do ask that you provide, I believe we call them letters of support. Is that right, Eric, in the
Yes,
RFP?
that's correct.
for potential subcontractors that the administrator would be subcontracting with. We will not select the subcontractors, and by we, I mean DFSS or the city won't select the subcontractors for you, but as part of your proposal, you'll need to submit the letters of support for subcontractors that you've identified that will help you carry out your full program.
Next question here, how many meals per day are expected?
So the RFP is requesting 3 meals per day. One a cold breakfast and then a hot lunch and dinner.
Next question here, when submitting menu, do you want portion sizes listed so you can see that daily minimum food components are being met?
Good question. Just to ensure that we're asking that as it's listed and described in the RFP, we'll address that in the amendment.
Next question here, can you please list respite sites and addresses and a price range for that program?
So yes, we can put this, I think, through the amendment, but the respite sites really are our police stations, which is readily available on the city's website. Overall, the price range for the entire program is $13 through $17 per day per client. So again, your proposal is for either or both regions, and you'd be serving respite sites and shelters in that region. So your budget and cost proposals should capture all of those costs.
Next question here, what is the total amount available for funding for this program?
We will answer that through the amendment.
To clarify, sorry, this is the next question. To clarify, staffing, food delivery, and hydration are supposed to cover culturally congruent meals at 13 to 17 an hour.
No, the $13 through $17 range is a per client per day meal cost, which should include or that is what that range is capturing staffing, food delivery, hydration, and so on, but it's a range for per client per day meal cost.
Great. Next question here. What is considered a subcontractor?
So a subcontractor is someone that the administrator would be subcontracting with, so getting into a contract with, to support and carry out the full program that you will, describe in the application that you'll be submitting. And again, for subcontractors, we are asking to provide letters of support for subcontractors that you have identified and that are part of the proposal that you'll be submitting.
Next question here, is coffee available for every meal, as well as milk and coffee?
I don't believe we require coffee to be available for every meal, but we can make sure that we answer that as appropriately described in the RFP and the amendment. Otherwise, I encourage you to, again, the webinar did not capture all of the details. We really tried to highlight as much as possible, but please, please, please thoroughly read the RFP. Because the full description in the RFP and the narrative in the RFP is getting to a lot of these questions. We'll answer it in the amendment because you're asking here, but I will say please read all of the information that we've listed in the RFP.
Great. I see we have answered questions that will be included in the amendment as well. And that is our final one. So thank you all for attending this webinar. We will be getting this online as soon as possible. And yeah, again, remember, start early, save often. Our deadline is November 9, and we look forward to receiving your applications. Thank you all for your time today.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Eric.